Welcome to Talk Treatises.
It is wonderful to be back.
Today we are opening a file that, I'll be honest with you, sat on my desk for quite a while, looking just a little bit intimidating.
I can imagine.
It is one of those texts that people love to name drop at cocktail parties to sound incredibly smart, but if you actually press them on it, very few people have read it cover to cover.
That is often the case with the classics, isn't it? We assume we know what they say because we know the cultural shorthand, but the reality of the text is usually far more strange, far more difficult, and, well, far more interesting than the summary suggests.
Exactly. We are talking about Plato today, but we aren't talking about the Republic with its caves and philosopher kings.
No.
We aren't talking about the symposium and the nature of love. We are talking about the Cratylus.
The Cratylus.
Yeah.
It is the black sheep of the Platonic dialogues in many ways. It is, I think, the only time Plato really sits down and dedicates an entire work, a very dense work, to the subject of etymology.
The history and correctness of words.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for a lot of people, that sounds like a snooze fest. I mean, I started reading this thinking, okay, we're going to talk about nouns and verbs and grammar rules.
Right. A bit dry.
But that is not what this is at all, is it? Suddenly we're talking about the nature of the universe, the gods, the physics of reality, and whether everything is flowing like a river or standing still like a rock.
That is the beauty of it. Mm. On the surface, the Cratylus asks a simple, almost technical question. Are names correct? But to answer that, Plato realizes you have to drag in everything else.
Everything.
You have to drag in metaphysics, you have to drag in epistemology, how we know what we know, and you even have to drag in politics. Mm-hmm. It turns out that a discussion about words is actually a battle for the nature of reality.
So let's set the scene for everyone listening. We are in Athens. It's the 4th century BC. What is the vibe? Because this isn't a stuffy university lecture hall. This is a vibrant, chaotic world.
Oh, it's a time of immense intellectual ferment. You have to remember, this is the golden age of the sophists. These were itinerant teachers, traveling intellectuals who went from city to city, claiming they could teach you virtue, rhetoric, and, most importantly, how to win any argument.
Regardless of which side you were on.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The original spin doctors.
Right?
Precisely. They were charging huge fees for this, and the youth of Athens were just flocking to them. And one of the biggest debates of the time, the hot topic at every Athenian dinner party, was the debate between physis and nomos.
Okay, let's unpack that. Physis and nomos.
Yeah.
Because these are the two poles that this whole deep dive really revolves around.
Physis is nature. It refers to things that are objectively true regardless of what humans think or say.
Okay.
Fire burns in Greece and it burns in Persia. That is physis. It doesn't care about your opinion.
Right. Gravity doesn't care if I believe in it or not. It's just there.
Exactly. On the other hand, you have nomos. Nomos is convention, law, or custom.
So things we agree on.
Things we agree on. For example, we drive on the right side of the road in some countries. People in Britain drive on the left. That isn't a law of nature. The cars don't explode if you switch sides. That is nomos. It is purely in agreement.
So the debate in Athens was, how much of our lives is nature and how much is just custom?
That's the one. Is justice natural, or is it just something we made up to keep order? Is virtue something inherent, or is it just a habit we learn?
And in the Cratylus, Plato takes this massive cultural debate and applies it specifically to language.
Yes. Are words natural? Do they have a physis, a real hardwired connection to the things they describe? Or are they purely nomos arbitrary labels that we just agreed upon because it was convenient?
And that brings us to our cast of characters. We have Socrates, obviously. He's our guide, our interrogator, the guy who refuses to give a straight answer.
Of course.
But who are the combatants here? Who represents these two sides of the debate?
Okay, so in the blue corner, representing convention or nomos, we have Hermogenes.
Hermogenes. The sources say he's the younger brother of Callias. Now, Callias was this incredibly wealthy guy who spent a fortune on sophists. He was sort of the sugar daddy of the intellectual world at the time.
He was, but Hermogenes himself is poor, and his name is deeply ironic, which is a key plot point.
I found this fascinating.
Hermogenes literally means born of Hermes, or son of Hermes. Hermes is the god of luck, gain, commerce.
And Hermogenes is broke and unlucky.
Exactly. So his very name is a lie, which actually plays into the argument later on. It's a beautiful bit of dramatic irony.
Okay, so that's the conventionalist. And in the red corner,
we have Cratylus. He is a disciple of Heraclitus.
Heraclitus, the you cannot step in the same river twice guy. The philosopher of flux.
The very same. Heraclitus believed that the fundamental nature of the universe is change. Everything is moving, nothing is stable. Cratylus takes this very, very seriously.
So he's the naturalist.
He's the naturalist. He believes that names must be natural. They must inherently describe the thing, or else they aren't names at all. They're just noise.
So we have a conventionalist who says words are just habits, and a naturalist who says words are divine links to reality.
And sitting in the middle is Socrates,
who claims, right at the start, that he knows nothing about the subject.
Of course he does. He makes a wonderful joke that he couldn't afford the 50 drachma lecture course on language by the famous sophist Prodicus.
Right.
He says he only took the 1 drachma course.
I love that. It's like, I bought the economy class ticket to wisdom, so don't blame me if I'm wrong. It's such a disarming way to start a fight.
It sets the tone perfectly. It's witty, it's self-deprecating, but it's also a warning to you, the listener. Do not take everything I'm about to say literally. Socrates is going to play with these men.
So let's dive into the first round. The thesis statement of this whole discussion is that the dialogue is a double-edged sword. It's going to attack both sides. But Hermogenes gets the floor first. What's his argument? How does he defend convention?
Hermogenes takes the hardline conventionalist stance.
Right.
He says, look, there is no natural reason why we call a man a man. We could call him a horse if we wanted to.
He actually uses the example of slaves, right? He says we change the names of our slaves whenever we feel like it, and the new name works just as well as the old one.
Right. It's a purely utilitarian view of language. He goes even further. If I decide to call a man a horse in the privacy of my own home, Hermogenes argues that for me, personally, that is the correct name.
Wow.
Even if the rest of the world calls him a man.
That sounds incredibly relativistic. It's like, my truth is my truth.
It is the ultimate relativity. It echoes Protagoras, the sophist, who famously said, man is the measure of all things.
I see the connection.
If Hermogenes is right, there is no objective truth in language. Whatever you say something is, that is what it is to you. There is no external standard to judge it against.
And Socrates, I assume, is not going to let that slide. He hates that kind of relativism.
Not for a second. Socrates starts dismantling this with what we might call the craft analogy. And this is really important to follow because it builds the foundation for the rest of the dialogue.
I found this whole section fascinating. He starts by asking about truth and falsehood.
Yes. He asks, Hermogenes, is there such a thing as a true proposition and a false proposition? And Hermogenes says, say, yes, of course there is. Okay, says Socrates. If a sentence can be true, then the parts of the sentence, the words, must also be capable of being true or false.
That seems like a bit of a logical leap, but I see where he's going. If the whole car is red, the doors must be red.
Roughly, yes. But then he pivots to actions. This is the crucial move. Socrates argues that speaking is an action. It's something we do in the world.
Like cutting or burning or weaving.
Exactly. And this is where he traps him. He says, if you want to cut the piece of wood, you can't just cut it however you like.
Right. You need a saw. You can't just use a spoon.
You have to cut it in accordance with the nature of the wood, and you have to use the proper instrument. You need a knife or a saw. And you can't cut against the grain if you want a clean cut. You have to respect the reality of the situation.
So actions are governed by objective reality, not just our whims.
Correct. So Socrates says, naming is a part of speaking. Speaking is an action. Therefore, naming is an action.
I see it.
To name correctly, you must use the proper instrument. You can't just use any sound you want any more than you can use a spoon to cut oak.
And the instrument is the name?
The name is the tool. Just as the shuttle is the tool of the weaver to separate the threads. And who makes the tool?
A carpenter makes the shuttle.
And who makes the name?
The legislator.
This is a very specific, almost mythical concept for Plato. The legislator is the rarest of all artisans. He is the one who looks at the ideal form of the thing, the essence of a human or a god or a virtue, and then he encodes that essence into sounds and syllables.
I love the analogy he uses about the metal here. He says, a smith can make a drill out of different types of iron, but as long as it has the form of a drill, it works. So you can have a Greek word or a barbarian word, different syllables, different material, but if they capture the same form, they are both correct names.
Precisely. It allows for different languages to exist while still maintaining that there's an objective right way to name things. It's not about the specific sound, it's about the function. But here's the kicker. Who judges the work? Who knows if the tool is any good?
The user.
The user. The carpenter makes the rudder for the ship.
But the pilot tells him if it steers the ship correctly.
Exactly. The legislator makes the name, but who uses the name?
The person who asks and answers questions. The dialectician. The philosopher.
Boom. There it is. In just a few moves, Plato has stripped the power of language away from the mob, from convention, and handed it to the philosopher.
So it's not a democracy.
Not at all. He argues that we cannot just use words however we want. We're using tools we didn't make, and only the expert, the dialectician, knows if they are sharp or blunt.
So Hermogenes is completely on the ropes. He admitted that there's a right way to do things, and now he has to admit there's a right way to name things.
He's cornered.
But he challenges Socrates. He says, okay, show me. You say there's a natural correctness to names. Prove it.
And this is where the dialogue takes a turn that has baffled scholars for 2,000 years.
It's weird.
It gets wonderfully weird. Socrates suddenly claims he's been inspired.
Right.
He says he was hanging out with Euthyphro, a priest and a bit of a religious fanatic, earlier that morning. And he says Euthyphro's wisdom has possessed him, like a muse.
He says, I'll yield to this inspiration today, and tomorrow we'll find a priest to exorcise me.
It's an amazing line.
It's a disclaimer. He's telling us, watch out. I'm about to go on a wild ride, and I might be making this all up as I go along.
It's his philosophical get-out-of-jail-free card.
It is. And then he launches into pages and pages of etymologies. He starts breaking down Greek words to find the hidden descriptions inside them.
Let's look at some of these because they are creative. I think the listeners need to hear just how far Socrates stretches these words to make his point.
Creative is a polite word. Some are brilliant, some are clearly jokes. He calls them cosmetic changes. He claims that over time, people added letters or removed letters to make the words sound better for euphony, and in doing so, they hid the original meaning.
So he has to perform surgery on the words to find the truth.
Exactly. He starts with the gods, theos.
Okay.
He says the first inhabitants of Greece, the Proto-Greeks, only knew the sun, moon, earth, stars, and heaven as gods. And since they saw these things always running across the sky, they called them theos, from the verb thein, meaning to run.
So God just means runner.
In this specific etymology, yes. It links the divine to motion. Keep an eye on that. Motion is going to become a major theme here.
Okay, I will. Then he does heroes. I like this one.
Heroes. He connects it to eros love, because heroes are born from the love of a god for a mortal. It's quite poetic.
It is, but then he pivots.
He does, he says, or maybe it comes from Irene, meaning to speak. So, heroes are actually rhetoricians. They are master speakers who can ask and answer questions.
Which feels like a dig at the sophists again. You guys think you're heroes just because you can talk.
It's absolutely a satirical jab. He's playing with his audience, and then he tackles man, anthropos.
This is a famous one. A lot of people have heard this derivation.
He breaks anthropos down into a whole sentence. Anathron ab open.
He who looks up at what he sees.
Exactly. He argues that animals see things they perceive, but they don't reflect on them. Man sees and then looks up. He contemplates what he has seen. That is the definition of humanity for Socrates. Reflection.
It's beautiful. What about body? Soma.
This is very Orphic, very mystical. He links soma, the body, to sema, which means tomb.
The body is the tomb of the soul.
Yes. The soul is buried in this flesh, paying a penalty for some ancient crime. Or, he says, maybe it's from sozane, meaning to keep safe. The body is a prison enclosure that keeps the soul inside until it's paid its dues.
It's dark, but it fits the Platonic view that the physical world is a kind of trap for the intellect.
It does. But as he goes on, the etymologies start to drift in a very specific direction. He starts analyzing the virtues, wisdom, justice, courage. And a pattern emerges, a very suspicious pattern.
The flux.
The flux, Heraclitus. Socrates starts finding motion in every single good word.
Give us an example.
Take wisdom, phronesis. Socrates claims it comes from phorus kai runoesis.
Which means?
Perception of motion and flux.
Right.
Or how about justice dikaiosun? He says it comes from diaion.
That which penetrates, like a piercing arrow, something moving through something else.
Exactly. He defines good, agathon, as the admirable and the swift. He defines understanding as going along with things. Every positive term is linked to movement, flow, speed.
And the negative terms, what about ignorance?
They're all linked to stopping. Ignorance is that which halts the soul's progress. Difficulty is an impediment to motion. Error is being slow.
So on the surface, Socrates is proving that language is designed to describe a universe in constant motion. A Heraclitean universe.
That's right. He's essentially saying to Hermogenes, look, The ancestors who made these words, the original legislators, they believed in the flux.
He is building this massive edifice of etymology that says the people who invented words believe that everything is moving.
That is what he seems to be doing.
But, and here's the twist, does Socrates believe it?
That is the million-dollar question. Throughout this entire performance, he keeps dropping these little hints. He says the name givers might have just been dizzy.
Dizzy, I love this part.
He says essentially, maybe the universe isn't spinning. Maybe the name givers were just spinning in circles trying to understand it, got dizzy, and assumed the world was moving too.
They projected their own vertigo onto reality.
That is hilarious. He's saying their entire philosophy was just a result of a medical condition. It is a devastating critique wrapped in a joke. He's showing that, yes, words encode a philosophy, the philosophy of flux. But if that philosophy is wrong, then the words are wrong. He is setting a trap for the naturalists.
This feels like the perfect pivot point. We've spent the first half of the discussion watching Socrates overwhelm Hermogenes with these inspired derivations. Hermogenes is dazed. He's ready to convert.
Oh, he is. He's thinking, wow, language really is deep and natural.
And that is when Cratylus steps in.
The naturalist. The man who thinks you can't step in the same river twice.
He's been listening to all this, and he's happy, right? Socrates just spent an hour proving that words describe the flux. This is his home turf.
Cratylus is delighted. He thinks he has won. He says, Socrates, you are an oracle. Your words are my mind. He thinks Socrates is confirming his entire worldview.
But Socrates is the gadfly. He doesn't let anyone get comfortable.
Never. As soon as Cratylus agrees, Socrates turns the guns on him. He switches sides immediately. It's a brilliant rhetorical move.
So how does he attack the naturalist position? Cratylus says names are natural. If I call you Hermogenes and you aren't a son of Hermes, I haven't lied. I've just made a meaningless noise.
I just hammered a brass pot, is the phrase he uses.
Right. This is the problem of falsehood. Cratylus, like many thinkers of his time, had a hard time explaining how you can say what is not. If a name is the thing, then a false name is nothing. It's a non-event.
It's like pointing at a rock and saying cat. Cratylus would say, you didn't say cat, you just made a meaningless sound. Because that rock isn't a cat, so you can't lie.
Which is a convenient position to hold. How does Socrates get around that?
To dismantle this, Socrates brings up the image argument. And this is arguably the most important philosophical contribution of the dialogue regarding the nature of representation. Walk us through it. It's a bit of a mind bender.
Socrates says, Cratylus, you agree that names are images of things? Cratylus says, yes, of course. Okay, says Socrates. Imagine a god makes an image of you, Cratylus. He copies your color, your shape, but he doesn't stop there.
He also copies your insides, your warmth, your softness, your motion, your very soul.
If he copies everything perfectly, down to the last atom.
Socrates asks, is that an image of Cratylus? Or is it a second Cratylus?
It's a second Cratylus. It's a clone.
Exactly. If an image is perfect in every single way, it ceases to be an image. It becomes a double. For an image to be an image, it must lack something that the original has.
A painting of a man lacks depth and life. A photograph lacks motion. That's what makes it a painting or a photograph.
And a name must lack the full reality of the thing it names. If the word fire burned your mouth, it wouldn't be a word. It would be fire.
So because names are imperfect images, there must be degrees of correctness.
Yes.
Some images are better than others. A sketch is better than a stick figure, but neither is a real person.
And if there are degrees, then mistakes are possible. You can have a bad name that still kind of works but isn't perfect. This destroys Cratylus's binary view that a name is either perfect or noise.
So falsehood is possible again.
Falsehood is back on the table. Then Socrates gets into the nitty-gritty of letters. This is where we get into these sounds themselves.
The phones.
Yes. Socrates suggests that the first legislators used specific sounds to mimic physical actions. This is what we call sound symbolism. It's a very modern idea, actually.
He talks about the letter rho, R.
He says the tongue vibrates rapidly when you say rr. So the legislator used rho for words involving motion, rushing, crushing, rhone to flow, rhohe current.
And lambda, L.
Lambda is smooth. The tongue glides, so it's used for Leos level, Liperon sleek, Olesthene to slip.
This sounds a lot like onomatopoeia. It makes intuitive sense. We still feel this today. Sharp sounds versus round sounds. The kiki-booba effect.
It does. It's a brilliant theory. But then Socrates traps Cratylus with it. He asks about the word scleros.
Scleros, that means hardness, right?
Yes, but listen to the sound. SKL-erotes. It has a lambda in it. An L, a soft letter.
Uh-oh. So the word for hardness has a soft sound embedded inside it.
Socrates says, Cratylus, you understand what sclerotes means, right? Cratylus says, yes, of course, it means hardness.
Okay.
But, says Socrates, it contains a lambda, which you agree signifies softness. So how do you understand it?
It can be through resemblance because the resemblance is wrong. The sound is fighting the meaning.
Exactly. So Socrates forces him to admit that custom convention must be doing the heavy lifting. We agree that this sound, even though it's imperfect, refers to hardness.
So naturalism takes a huge hit. We can't purely rely on the sounds to tell us the truth. Convention is necessary to patch the holes in language.
Cratylus calls convention a poor creature, but he has to admit it's necessary. And this leads us to section 4, the philosophical climax. This is where the trap snaps shut on the Heraclean worldview.
This is the Civil War of Names segment.
That's right. Socrates points out that while many words, as they just discussed, imply motion or flux, many other words imply rest.
He mentions episteme, which means knowledge.
Yes. He argues episteme might come from histoni, to stand, to stop. If you know something, you stop the motion of it in your mind. You grasp it. It becomes stable.
So we have names that scream, everything moves, and names that whisper, things stand still.
It's a complete deadlock, a contradiction baked into the very fabric of language. So Socrates asks Cratylus, if the names are fighting a civil war, how do we decide who is right? We can't just count votes.
We can't ask the names themselves because the names are the problem.
So we have to go to the things themselves.
This is the epistemological shift. We stop looking at the label and start looking at the product.
And Socrates poses a logical puzzle to Cratylus. It's a killer. He says, you claim the first legislator gave names based on his knowledge of things.
Right.
But if names are the only way to know things, how did the legislator know the things in order to name them in the first place?
It's the chicken and the egg.
It's a perfect circle. If you needed a name to know a thing, the first guy couldn't have known the thing to give it a name. Therefore, there must be a way to know reality without names.
Direct access.
Direct access. And this is where he attacks the flux directly. He's been building to this the whole time.
And he uses the forms.
He does. He says to Cratylus, let's look at the things themselves. Is there such a thing as beauty itself? Or goodness itself, the pure forms?
Cratylus has to say yes. He's a Platonist in that sense.
And Socrates says, if everything is in flux, if everything is changing every microsecond, can you say that beauty is beautiful?
No, because by the time you finish the sentence, it has changed into something else. The subject of your sentence is gone before you finish talking about it.
Exactly. If it changes, it isn't it anymore. If reality is a leaky pot, you can't hold any knowledge. You can't even say, I know this, because the I has changed and that this has changed in the time it takes to say it. Knowledge becomes impossible.
So if knowledge is possible, which we have to assume it is,
then there must be something that does not change. There must be stability. The forms must exist, and they must be static and eternal.
And that is the mic drop.
Effectively, yes, he tells Cratylus. The name givers might have been wrong. They might have believed in flux, but they were deceived. Do not trust words. Trust the things, and investigate whether this flux is really true, or if there's an eternal stability.
And Cratylus, stubborn to the end, says, I'll think about it, but I still like Heraclitus.
And he heads off to the country. But the seed has been planted. The reliance on language as the ultimate source of truth has been shattered.
So, after all that, what does this all mean? Why does this dialogue matter today outside of, classics departments?
Well, it matters because it's the first systematic attempt in Western history to deal with linguistics. Plato is anticipating so many things that wouldn't be formalized for millennia.
You mentioned sound symbolism earlier.
Yes, the idea that sounds carry emotional or physical weight. We still study this in psychology and linguistics. Why do we associate certain sounds with certain shapes? That is the Cratylus debate right there.
And the idea of language evolution.
Absolutely. Plato acknowledges that time, foreign influence, and this idea of euphony making things sound nice disguise the original meaning of words.
Yeah.
He sees language as a layered archaeological site you have to dig through.
But the biggest takeaway for me, the thing that feels most relevant, is the warning.
The warning not to mistake the map for the territory.
The map is not the territory. Yes.
We live in a world of words. We define ourselves by labels. Our political discourse is largely a war of definitions. What is freedom? What is justice? Plato is grabbing us by the shoulders and saying, the word is not the thing. The word justice is just a sound, an imperfect image. The reality of justice is what you have to find, and you can't find it by just analyzing the word.
It's a call to critical thinking. Don't let the vocabulary that's handed to you dictate your reality.
Precisely. If you only learn the words, you are trapped in the legislator's cage. And remember, the legislator might have been dizzy.
I love that image, the dizzy legislator.
It explains a lot about human history, doesn't it?
It certainly does. Now, speaking of dizzying concepts, it is time for our favorite segment.
The thought experiments.
As always, a disclaimer for everyone listening. These scenarios are for entertainment and educational purposes only. Do not try to reorganize your local government based on what we are about to say.
Please don't. We take no responsibility.
Experiment number 1, the Cratylus prison.
Okay, imagine a society where Cratylus's strict naturalism is not just a theory, but the law of the land.
So in this world, if I don't use the true name of a thing, I haven't actually spoken.
You've just made noise.
Right.
So imagine a courtroom. You're trying to sue someone for breach of contract, but your contract has a typo.
Just one letter is wrong.
In our world, a judge interprets the intent. In the Cratylus prison, the contract doesn't exist. That misspelled word isn't a word. The paper is legally blank. Case dismissed.
That's terrifying. The entire legal system would collapse.
It gets worse. Identity. If your name is John and you undergo a significant personality change, maybe you become less kind or you learn a new skill, your name must logically change to reflect your new reality.
So my driver's license is invalid every time I have a mood swing.
Essentially. The Department of True Names would be a nightmare. On the plus side, identity theft is impossible because you are your name. But retaining your property is also impossible because you are in constant flux.
It sounds like a Kafka novel written by a grammarian.
A perfect description.
All right, experiment number 2, the flux language AI.
Let's look at the Heraclitean side. Imagine we train a super advanced artificial intelligence, but we constrain its training data. It is only allowed to learn a language constructed on Socrates' flux etymologies that we were talking about earlier.
So every word it knows implies motion, speed, and change. There are no static concepts in its vocabulary.
Every noun is a verb in disguise. House implies crumbling. Fact implies running away. Now, we ask this AI to solve a static problem. We ask it, what is 2 plus 2?
A mathematical truth. Eternal. Static. Unchanging.
The AI suffers a logic breakdown. It cannot process the concept of 4 as a fixed destination. It sees the 2s as rushing rivers that merge. It tries to output an answer, but its own language code forces the answer to move before it can be printed.
It can't do math. It can't do logic.
It could probably write incredible poetry. It could describe a sunset or a revolution perfectly, but it cannot build a bridge because it cannot conceive of the bridge staying there. Its world is too unstable for engineering.
It shows that if you bake a specific philosophy into your language, you limit what you can even think.
The limits of my language mean the limits of my world, as Wittgenstein would later say. Plato was onto it 2,000 years earlier.
And on that note, we have reached the end of our journey through the Cratylus.
From the marketplace of Athens to the invention of grammar and maybe even the limits of artificial intelligence.
We hope you look at your words a little differently today. Ask yourself, are you the master of your words, or do the words you use secretly dictate how you see the world?
A question worth asking.
Thank you for listening to Talk Treatises.
Until next time.